He's been described as shy, modest, unspectacular. But since he became the catalyst for one of the most passionate controversies this country has seen in a long time, Geoffrey Blainey's sheltered academic life has become history itself. He's been the cause of extraordinary parliamentary behaviour, national political and public debate, and the target of vicious personal attacks. Single-handedly, Geoffrey Blainey has raised a storm over our immigration policies, and single-handedly, he's facing the consequences.
I suppose one's under pressure because for 3 months now I've been running what is really a middle ground argument, and I think it's an argument that's got widespread support, and the Gallup poll suggests that it is the majority argument, but it's, people are very frightened to comment in public on the argument. People have written to me, saying to watch out and outlining circumstances, but I haven't had any threats, and I've had letters that are very bitter letters and very angry letters, but they're a minority of the letters. I would think that of the letters I've received, 9 out of 10 would be favourable. I don't mean that that's a cross-section of public opinion, it isn't, but they're the people who've written to me.
Professor Blainey is surprised at the reaction to his opinions. He denies emphatically that he's racist.
I try not to use the word racist at all, but the easiest way to test whether I'm a racist is, I think I've written 16 or 17 books on factual subjects. Everyone must touch in some way or other on an ethnic issue. If I was a racist, I think it would have been sheeted home to me already. The thing that's surprised me in the last 3 months is the inability of those people who were such strong proponents of the present immigration policy to defend it on reasonably rational grounds. Well, I think it's called the King's Cross Community Group, and apparently they have an annual lecture by somebody well known on a subject of public interest, and this was arranged quite a few months ago to speak on immigration. It was a long time ago that the choice was made, and I suppose if I were asked tonight what I'd speak on something less controversial, but they've already advertised it and organised it. I've got no objection to them expressing their views. It doesn't really frighten me. I realise it's a risk, but I don't think I'd say it frightens me. I don't like it, but I'm not frightened of it.
Professor Blainey mightn't have been frightened beforehand, but what was in store was possibly the worst and most frightening experience of his life.
Testing, testing, testing.
7 o'clock, and the opposition was early. If Geoffrey Blainey had hoped that the rain would keep the demonstrators away, he was in for a disappointment. And if his rights of free speech were ever in doubt, he had every reason to doubt it last night. Of one thing there was no doubt: the speech would be loud.
Well, just to give you an idea of how loud the noise is, this is the sort of thing that Professor Blainey is going to have to contend with. I don't fancy his chances.
But not all the demonstrators were here to oppose the good professor. Some were there to oppose the demonstrators. Tempers were rising.
Platform for that racist.
No, don't call him a fascist, mate. If I can think of a racist slogan that
then you've got more brains than Blainey.
Will that decide the issue? No, you with the umbrella. If I can
we really don't care if the racist slogan's right. What we care about is the fact that they're racist.
You with the
You with the
high-tech voice.
We're here to protest about racism.
I'm an ecologist.
It's a very good
I'm an ecologist, and I object to your battery.
Well, that's very unfortunate.
Well, stop using technology on me.
If you're really worried about technology, you get your face off the TV cameras, mate. Now, bugger off.
Oh, I see.
With cries of no free speech for racists and shut Blainey up, it was hardly the sort of stuff to make a guest speaker feel confident. Nearly 250 people were at this hall in King's Cross to hear Professor Geoffrey Blainey. About 50 of them were demonstrators. The organisers had been dreading this meeting, and when the demonstrators and the counter-demonstrators got stuck into each other outside, their worst fears were confirmed.
Several months ago, I was invited to speak here on the subject of immigration, and I'm coming here by invitation. I don't want to force my views on you, and you have no right to force your views on those people who've come here to listen.
They're promoting hatred. This guy hates everybody, and he wants to use Asians as a vehicle for his opportunism. And you people are fools to be exploited.
And after more chanting, counter-chanting, arguments and abuse, the meeting finally got underway. Perhaps everyone had cooled off, or perhaps nearly an hour of constant yelling had made them hoarse. Anyway, much to our surprise, they let him have his say, up to a point.
Because nothing is more certain than this, that we are building for ourselves long-term troubles if at this stage we do not, as a nation, come to some agreement about the kind of Australia we would like. So the figures I've been giving are the official figures. And
It's not the numbers, it's the use you're putting them to.
I am here by invitation, and I would ask those people whether they would prefer to hear me or to hear you. Would you prefer to hear me? Therefore, the lady with the megaphone, if you believe in democratic opinion, you will take that as a resolution of disapproval of your conduct.
I'd suggest to you that the possible tensions are a result of simplistic arguments such as the ones you've been putting. Statements such as 40% are coming from Asia.
And
yes,
after this much interrupted speech, there were questions. Well, there were more statements of opinion than questions.
Why are the great majority?
And by now, Professor Blainey's voice was beginning to go.
Chinese. The present statistics indicate that of the 80,000 refugees we've had from Indochina, 55,000 of them are Chinese. The Chinese are coming here in large numbers because they're discriminated against by the government in Vietnam.
And if by now the demonstrators were getting tired of heckling him, someone else would soon redirect their rage.
You can call me a fascist if you will, because you can't think of anything else.
Mark Ferguson is from National Action, a group often accused of being near-fascist. By the way, he's standing in Bob Hawke's seat of Wills at the next election. Suddenly, Professor Geoffrey Blainey had become irrelevant. The stage had been usurped. Mark Joseph Ferguson reminded some members of the audience of another time and another place and another man 50 years ago.
Will inevitably cause a cultural catastrophe in this country that each and every one of you will regret, whether you're European or whether you're black. However, people like this do not give me the right to speak. And why do they not give me the right to speak? Because I speak something that is pragmatic. I am here out of conviction. Those people are acting completely on emotion. They are wholly and solely overwhelmed by an emotiveness.
I've not even attended a meeting as a spectator, as raucous and as potentially out of control as that one. The nearest I can think.
And after it was all over, back in his hotel room, Professor Blainey looked distinctly shell-shocked.
You know, when one is in a controversial area, one is going to be called all kinds of names of people one doesn't want to be associated with, or one intensely dislikes. That's part of the price, isn't it? The alternative is to shut up, and
well, that is the alternative. If you had your time again, would you shut up?
Well, no. I wish that it hadn't caused this embarrassment and this hoo-ha, but I believe that, I could be wrong, I believe that my reading of Australian past and present is a valid one, and that it's much better that we discuss this issue as best we can now, rather than in 4 years' time when it will be far more difficult.